one of my producers here, called the Home Office to check in, because we, like many other people, were seeing social media posts of people at this hotel, and the rumours were that it was going to be used as a migrant hotel. And they basically categorically denied it to her. And then now it turns out that they are going to use it as an overflow facility for a migrant processing centre, which makes you wonder, why can't they just be honest with you?
Yeah, all right then, surely we can trust the government, right? After all, it's their first priority to make sure British people, you and me, are safe. Well, take a look at this. This is the scene from the Britannia last night, where hundreds of small boat migrants were bussed into the hotel under the cover of darkness. And let's take a good look at the clientele, shall we? Men, all fighting age men, not a woman or child in sight. The time was around 1 a.m. Why did the Home Office move these men into the Britannia at 1 a.m? What kind of time is that? Some may think it was done deliberately, perhaps, to ensure it went without anybody noticing. And by the way, the government's doing this at the very same time they're censoring migrant hotel footage on social media under the Online Safety Act. And what's even worse is they're doing it at the same time of setting up a so-called elite Home Office department to monitor social media looking for critics of migrant hotels. I think just so they can grass you up to social media companies and ask them to ban your accounts. So, as I said, the government is literally spying on you at the same time as lying to you. But what does this kind of contempt towards the electorate create? Well, it creates anger, worry, concern, and distrust of authority. Distrust of the very people meant to have our best interests at heart. So while this was going on at the Britannia last night, today I went down to another migrant hotel at London's Barbican, where there have been dozens of arrests and charges in recent months for a range of alleged crimes linked to hotel migrants staying there. This woman I'm about to show you now is called Tony, and she told me why her community wanted the hotel shut down.
Here today?
Because I live in the local community and I'm concerned over my children's safety. I'm concerned about my old age pensioners who can't come into the local square, where we've always communed. This is our cafe.
So this is the square here. Just tell us, describe for viewers what's here, what's around here.
Fish and chip shop. They also, that's our George, and he opened a restaurant that's gone completely down the hill because obviously it was a thriving hotel at one stage. Now, as we know, it's just besieged.
So that's a great point. So because there's no genuine guests there's no tourists staying here, the local businesses are losing out because people aren't eating, people aren't going to the restaurants.
In the parks anymore, but you can't. How can you play with your kids on a paddling pool when you've got 4 or 5 men that you don't know glaring at you? They're disrespectful, they've got a different ideology.
Tony, I've been with the Antifa stand-up to racism lot in the past couple of hours.
They're not local.
They've been bussed in, and also they're fully masked, but they're calling you lot racist, they're calling you lot bigoted. What's your response?
We're a diverse community, so how can they call us racist? And I don't like the fact that these people are coming into our community, telling us what we've got to put up with, and it's our kids' children's safety that's paramount.
Yeah, well said. Well, I kept mingling, and another man I came across had a few choice words for our dear Prime Minister.
Why is it Keir Starmer continues to basically close his ears to the working people of this country who are telling them in no uncertain terms, we do not want these people in and around our children. We know the crime statistics. We know what's happening in our country here. What is wrong with them? Why are these politicians deaf and not hearing?
Later on, I popped over to the so-called anti-racism contingent and we spotted migrants smiling and laughing at the commotion below from their hotel window. Here they are on your screen now if you're watching on television. Some were waving. I saw others dancing along to the music being blasted out by the so-called anti-racism protesters below. Others I saw were throwing their hands in the air and having a jolly good time before I guess they were asked to move on to stop provoking the crowds below. Soon after, I was surprised to see far-left militant Antifa rock up in full face masks, their identities hidden from full view. Let's have a quick look. This is them. This is the footage I recorded on my phone. Antifa, if you're not aware of who they are, it means anti-fascist. But in truth, I'd argue they are the biggest fascists going. They're a global organisation. They're often spotted in the United States, who are routinely violent, very organised and totally brainwashed by an ideology that wants to destroy capitalism and, indeed, democracy in the West. They censor free speech and call anybody they disagree with a Nazi. Of course they do. The truth is, the most trouble today came from Antifa down in London, who grappled with police, threw missiles and bottles at officers as the coppers tried to control crowds. Interestingly, they were allowed to keep their face masks on as well, unlike other protests such as the Bell Hotel in Epping last weekend. I was there, where police enforced an order for people to remove all face coverings. In fact, I saw people get nicked because they refused to take their masks off. So despite Antifa's intimidation, this is the moment, and this is iconic, this is the moment a brave British woman stood defiantly in front of a masked Antifa mob and stood her ground in the face of being called a racist Nazi.
It's the personification of Britain at the moment. A lone British woman, you know, by herself, defiantly holding up a Union Jack flag against a sea of Antifa masked protesters. Why are you standing there so defiantly? Are you not intimidated by this lot?
No.
Why do you feel so strongly you have to stand here and hold the Union Jack?
My children, my grandchildren.
You fear for their future? What do you think of this lot turning up with their face masks?
Stop.
Okay.
No mask. No mask.
Well done, that woman. I tried to find her in the crowd afterwards to try and get her on the show tonight, but I lost her in the melee. But I'd argue she speaks for a lot of the country right now. But sticking with Antifa, who and what are they? What are they doing at protests organised by worried Londoners who are concerned about illegal migrants and migrant hotels? Well, my next guest spotted these posters dotted all around London in the days leading up to today. Let's take a look. It reads, "Kick the racists out of London. Assemble at 2 p.m. Call out by Central London anti-fascist." That is an Antifa poster. Those were spotted by the New York Times bestselling author Andy Ngo, a man who's had his own fair share of skirmishes with Antifa in recent years, particularly in the US. He's the author of Unmasked, Inside Antifa's Radical Plan to Destroy Democracy, which is, by the way, available at all good bookstores, of course, and online. And I'm pleased to say Andy joins me now. Andy, good evening. Thank you for your company. I wanted to speak with you about Antifa particularly because, as I just mentioned, you've had, as I describe it, your fair share of run-ins with them. Can you just explain for the British audience, who are Antifa, where are they from, what are their intentions, who funds them, if you know? What's your thoughts?
Antifa is a violent far-left movement, and they are decentralized in how they are generally organized. So you can think of their structure as actually very similar to how jihadist movements organize, in that you can have formalized groups that have names, and then you can have those who are radicalized to the individual level based on the propaganda that is put out into the ether, the internet, or the public. And you just showed some of the propaganda in the flyers. It is relentless. It's in person, it's online, it's through some of the institutions as well. And in terms of their ideology, they claim to be anti-fascist. But if you looked at some of the signs that were at the direct action that they held today outside that hotel, one of them was "Smash Fascism, Open the Borders." No states, no borders. The ideology is anti-civilization. They are anti-British, anti-America, and anti-Western civilization. They want to see the destruction of nation states. And they know, as well as even those who are protesting on the opposite side, that mass migration on this type of scale in a welfare state is destabilizing and can push the state to a breaking point, which is what they want. They want to see the downfall of capitalism, of social structures. And so in the masking, which you recorded in some of those great videos, is intentional. They tell their militant comrades to come out and do that, one, to be intimidating, and two, when given the opportunity, to commit crimes and to be able to get away with it. They weren't able to carry out a lot of violence today because of the overwhelming force of the police presence.
Yeah, they are intimidating, especially wearing military-style balaclavas. When they first rolled up, so just to give you some colour, you had the Stand Up to Racism protesters, who I argue were the sort of socialist lot with their pre-made placards. They were in one side of the protest. And then suddenly the Antifa lot came down from a completely separate part of the city, all together, nicely organised, but all masked. And there was a couple of, as I described, military-style balaclavas being branded. One guy in particular, I guess he recognised me from the show, from the channel. He stood and stared at me for around, I'd say, a minute and a half. Didn't say anything. I didn't want to engage particularly with his eye vision, but I knew he was staring at me and trying to intimidate me. Why do they mask up? And also, what is their potential for violence? Because I know that you've had physical interactions with Antifa in the US, right, Andy?
Yes, unfortunately, I've been beaten by them several times in the course of my reporting in Portland, Oregon, where they're very active in the United States. So the masking serves a number of functions, but one, intimidation, but two, primarily so that they can evade being identified by law enforcement or members of the public. So after I was beaten, for example, law enforcement said that they couldn't identify my assailants because conveniently they were all masked in those balaclava types of face coverings. I just want to emphasize that today I think we didn't see mass brawls because of the presence of the police. That is a big difference between my country and yours, in that police in London keep demonstrators separated. I would not be surprised if within the backpacks of some of those militants that they came ready with weapons, because that is also something they instruct their members to do.
Wow, that's pretty chilling to hear, Andy, quite frankly. Just finally, does it concern you, I know you're from the US, does it concern you to see Antifa now rocking up to these events in London, these protests, not just London, all across the country, because lots of these protests have started with very honest intentions from concerned mums and dads. They've had maybe a child assaulted in their area by a hotel migrant. Does it concern you that we're now getting to the point where Antifa are rocking up?
It concerns me because a lot of the members of the public can be easily misled by the propaganda. In the flyers they put out, the Antifa and their allies will call their opposition racist and fascist. And all you have to do in places like London and Manchester and other cities is to use that type of inflammatory rhetoric and lies to get people showed up, angry and ready for a fight.
Yeah, indeed. Andy, thank you so much. I really appreciate your company this evening. You are, of course, the senior editor of the Post Millennial and author of that great book, Unmasked, Inside Antifa's Radical Plan to Destroy Democracy. Let's hope they don't succeed, eh? Andy, thank you very much. Have a good evening and the rest of your weekend.